Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Darwin lecture on the theme of song. Dr. Issa Boulos is our speaker today. He is a renowned composer, lyricist, researcher, songwriter, whose works have been performed all over the world. He was born in Palestine, grew up there, and moved to the United States in his 20s. He trained from an early age on the piano, the oud, and his singing, and later studied composition at Columbia College in Chicago, and at the Roosevelt University. He earned his PhD in Ethnomusicology from Leiden University here in Europe, and his own work blends traditional instruments with contemporary innovation, as we will hear, creating music for orchestras that we won't hear probably, mixed ensembles, and has written hundreds of songs, several of which have become hits. His commissions include work for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, a project with the Silk Road Ensemble, and scores for award-winning films, documentaries, plays, and musicals. And his new album, entitled The Dark Side of the Moon, sets his poetry to his own compositions of voice and classical guitar, and has just been released. So I'm sure you can get a copy in any good website or whatever. He has a book shortly to be published, published next year, I think, on the history of Palestinian music, which will be published by the University of Texas. And his career, as you can tell, spans the United States, the Middle East, and Europe, earning recognition for both performance and scholarship, as we shall see. He has directed the Middle East Music Ensemble at the University of Chicago for almost a decade, and co-founded the Qatar Music Academy in 2010, where he served as head of music and set the whole thing up in Qatar. He now lives in Chicago, where he is the manager of the Harper College Community Music and Art Center. In his spare time, I can't believe he has any with that CV, but apparently he likes to cook, specializing in Near Eastern cuisine, I gather. So we won't be sampling that, but of course we will be sampling his story and his scholarship and his music. We're very grateful to Dr. Peter McMurray from Queen's College, who has loaned us the oud that Dr. Boulos will be playing. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Boulos to the stage to deliver his lecture. Issa.
I'll get to this at some point. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I want to thank everyone, all the organizers. There are plenty of them, a fantastic team, so responsive and thorough. It's really a pleasure to be here and an honor. I have 55 minutes, so I'm just going to hit the ground running. The Palestinian song in transition, the interplay of tradition and innovation. I looked at this period extensively for many, many years. There are meaningful Ottoman-era writings that document cultural life and music in Palestine, although they are dispersed across travelogues, memoirs, court chronicles, and late Ottoman personal writings, rather than concentrated in formal music treatises. Thousands of accounts describe Palestine as an Ottoman province, often focusing on major Ottoman cities such as Jerusalem, Nablus, Jaffa, Safad, and Akka, as well as on pilgrimage routes that connected these urban centers. Within these writings, authors frequently describe a rich spectrum of cultural practices including storytelling, shadow theater, singing, instrumental music, coffee house performances, public festivals, and Sufi musical rituals. Music and performance appear not as isolated artistic activities, but as integral elements of everyday urban, religious, and social life. In the 19th century, European missionaries and scholars such as William Thompson and Gustav Dalman provided particularly detailed descriptions of musical life in Palestine. Their accounts document rural songs, wedding music, and coffee house performances, as well as instruments such as the oud, rababa, nai, and qanun. Notably, Dalman went beyond descriptive prose by providing musical notation for some of the songs he encountered and transcribing dozens of song verses, offering rare documentation of Palestinian musical practices during the late Ottoman period. These images that you see here are from Thompson's book that he published in 1854. This is one of the pieces of notation that I found in Dalman's book. It's called the Palestinian Diwan. So at the bottom here is the original transcription, and the top one is one that is clearer to modern musicians so they can understand it. And those are the lyrics underneath that he transcribed as well. And this song appears obviously in rural contexts. There will be no accompaniment or rehearsals or anything like that. So it goes something like this. قاسم سجني مثل نحل بقافر واحتار أمري ما بكى لجناح الطير قاسم سجني مثل نحل بقافر واحتار أمري ما بكى لجناح الطير. The song can, or the segment, I'm not sure if I can call it song at this point, can go for much longer. The lyrics change, sometimes the subject matter changes. So which brings me to talking about the pillars of a song. Because if we want to understand song in a Palestinian context, let me just first identify things that are familiar to you. So in general terms, the fundamental elements that make a song are its words and its melody. Steady rhythmic elements may be added, or they may be absent altogether. In most cases, a song serves a function or fulfills a particular purpose, whether social, ritual, expressive, or practical. Some songs exhibit clear form and structure, while others do not. In all cases, songs are shaped by local taste and are performed according to the performance practices defined through their cultural context. Palestinian folk songs in particular tend to be very short, sort of an earlier version of song as we know it today. So I look at these at Palestinian folk songs, and I kind of divide them into categories. The first category consists of sung poems with a short melody and a consistent beat, just like the one I did. The second category consists of sung poems with a short melody also, but with some indication of form and consistent beat. And the third category consists of sung poems with a longer melody, with a contrasting second phrase with or without consistent beat. The beginning and ending of song poems are often shaped by context rather than by a fixed musical structure. So a song may open with a specific text that signals the start of a ceremony, wedding, ritual, or other event. In other cases, the action of ritual itself begins first and prompts the singing to commence, making the song appear potentially endless until an external action brings it to a close. Songs may likewise stop in response to an event, such as the end of a procession or the completion of a ritual step. In such contexts, songs commonly employ open-ended, strophic, iterative, or process-based forms, allowing them to continue, repeat, or conclude as required by the unfolding activity rather than by a predetermined musical endpoint. So if you look at these two images, one of them can go endlessly, and one of them can still go endlessly, but there could be some beginning and ends to it. The early recordings from the early 20th century indicate that Palestinian musical life extended well beyond the folk traditions commonly associated with a population that was largely rural by the early 1930s. And this is according to British records. It was 64%, I believe, rural by 1930, 1931. The musicians discussed here, or the ones that you're looking at, emerged from Palestine's most dynamic urban centers, Haifa, Jaffa, Jerusalem, and Akka, where musical activity was closely linked to broader regional developments. Their recordings reveal a high level of musical sophistication, drawing on classical genres circulating throughout the Near East, Egypt, and Iraq as part of the Arab Renaissance, what we call Nahda. Many of these artists later established successful careers in Egypt and Syria, before and after 1948. This period, following World War I, marked a major transformation of traditional musical practices, leading long-standing oral traditions to become increasingly disrupted by rapid urbanization and shifting socioeconomic conditions, rendering some practices obsolete while giving rise to new modern forms. An example of this is the song that I just sang for you. I have not found a reference to it. I found things similar to that melody, but it's probably obsolete by now. And if it wasn't for Darwin, we would never hear that kind of melody. The Palestine Broadcasting Service, PBS, 1936 to 1948, was an entity under the British Mandate government in Palestine. Meanwhile, the Near East Broadcasting Station, NEBS, also known as Sharq al-Adna and later as the Voice of Britain, was established, financed, and operated by the British government in Palestine, especially through its foreign ministry, using equipment from the British military and Allied intelligence during World War II. During the 1930s and 40s, dozens of Palestinian singers and musicians were active in the broadcasting scene. And this is just to give you a kind of a short list of some of those names. Their participation built upon the foundation laid by earlier artists and helped advance ideas of modernity and progress through music. And by the way, At the end of this presentation, there will be a barcode that you can scan, and you'll get a copy of everything that you see here. So you don't have to worry about writing anything. And this list, hopefully, will help us and help some of you recognize potentially some of these individuals, because believe it or not, that's how we're gathering information. We're gathering information from people. And they tell us, oh, my cousin was from Al-Akkawi family, and I may have a piece of paper about them. And we have collected photographs, recordings, letters, all sorts of things, just by talking about these individuals. So that's one of the reasons we have a QR code at the end. Recordings from this era fall into two categories. The first includes commercially released ones available in the market you can purchase, like the one I mentioned earlier for Rajab al-Akhal, which we continue again to collect and preserve. My emphasis, however, in this context is on recordings that were somehow captured at the PBS and NEBS studios that I sourced from various archives. Rex Keating stands out as one of those individuals who captured some recordings at PBS. His archive is available in the British Library, at the British Library, and there are other recordings that are available at BBC, which inherited a lot of those recordings ultimately. PBS and NEBS recordings mainly feature live performances of short songs. This reflects an ongoing trend at both stations toward brevity. They didn't want songs that are really too long, not just to limited airtime. Actually, NEBS, they had an endless amount of time. They had enough time to broadcast longer songs, but also to adapt local traditions into complete songs. So you noticed that Palestinian folk songs are very short, so they wanted to build on that. So extending them too much would sound something like they didn't sound organic to them. The emerging Egyptian long song format held little appeal to them, and some expressed this position in their writings during that period. Among the most popular short songs that emerged in that region were patriotic anthems. One of the earliest and still beloved examples is the anthem Mawtani, with lyrics by Palestinian poet Ibrahim Tuqan, who led the PBS from 1936 to 1940 and set to music by the Flayfil brothers. These songs typically followed a simple form, AABC or ABAC structures, balancing repetition with subtle contrasts, emotional peaks, and standard Arabic lyrics centered on unity, national pride, independence, sovereignty, and glorification of the homeland. So let's listen to an example, this example, which was many years later arranged by Hussein Nazik, a Palestinian from near Jerusalem who settled in Syria.
والحياة
So I think this kind of gives you an idea. Interestingly enough, this anthem, which became popular and it was adopted by various countries and revolutions throughout the 20th century, now it is the official anthem of Iraq. Yeah, it somehow made it there. We complained, but it didn't work. So the Palestinian musicians during that period started popularizing a genre emerged early in the 20th century known as الأغنية الشعبية, or a populist song. These songs could draw from folk melodies resulting in strophic forms, as the examples of these two songs that you see, Ya al-Mayla and Arrozana, which I will sing one of them right now. They might also feature newly composed elements such as a B section. So instead of having that melody by itself, composers would add a new melody, which would be considered the B section. It's kind of maybe a different area of the scale. There will be different rhythmic orientation, longer, shorter, to be a contrasting phrase, if you will. But altogether, these songs use simple melodies, straightforward rhythmic cycles, and just one or two maqams. The one that I'm going to play for you, not perform with the oud, the one that I'm going to play back is called the Burdu'an. Al-Burdu'an is oranges. Palestine was known for its oranges. And this song glorifies the oranges. And it emerged, was recorded at PBS, and you will see how it's designed to kind of popularize oranges or even sell them.
وبالنتيجة يخزي العين يا مسئينك بدموع العين وتعبنا لك فوق السنتين وبالنتيجة يخزي العين بيضت الوش ومليت السوق حلو يا بردوان طيب يا بردوان حلو يا بردوان طيب يا بردوان طعمك لذيذ حلو العشاء حلو يا بردوان طيب يا بردوان حلو يا بردوان طيب يا بردوان طعمك لذيذ سرو العطشان حلو يا بردوان طيب يا بردوان حلو يا بردوان طيب يا بردوان طعمك لذيذ سرو العطشان.
I think you get the idea. So I'm going to play a song for you. It's called Ya al-Mayla. I collected this song when I was directing the Birzeit University music band back in the early 1990s. And a member of the group from the Tannous family, he reached out to his grandmother, and he got the lyrics that they used to practice in Lid and Yafa. So we delivered it so many times. And interestingly, in the 1950s, even Fayrouz and the Rahbani brothers carried the same tune. But this one's going to sound a little different. In the colloquial dialect of the Eastern Mediterranean coastal regions in Palestine.
خشخشت له بالذهب عيني قلت له يا طيري قال لي زمانك مضى دور على غيري يا المايلة عالغصن عيني سمرة سابيتينا يحرق جليبه الهوى يا ما عمل فينا.
Widespread discontent in Palestine emerged from a combination of factors, including Jewish settler colonial activity, land purchases, and the internal and external displacement of Palestinians, which started well before 1948, and the unequal treatment of Arabs under British rule, which consistently favored Jewish interests. Against this backdrop, the singer and composer and poet Nuh Ibrahim, who had previously broadcast satirical songs on the Palestine Broadcasting Service, PBS, began producing overtly political music. His turn toward political expression led to his arrest by British authorities in February 1937, and despite this, he continued to write and compose political songs until his death in October 1938, when he was killed during a clash with British forces near the village of Tamra in the Galilee. During that period, most of you would know that the Palestinian Revolution emerged in the spring of 1936 and continued until 1939. Palestinians, just like an FYI, were permitted to sing patriotic songs that celebrated the homeland and its beauty, but any expression of political dissent or sentiment in songs was strictly prohibited. The songs that he used were driven, just like the song I did, from folk melodies, popular melodies, and he, for the most part, expanded his songs to include a B section. So there will be the main melody and there will be another melody contrasting it following. So let's listen to this example. This one, Dear Mr. Dill. Mr. Dill is Sir John Grier Dill, who was the head of British forces in Palestine from 1936 to 1937 during the revolution. So he sent this song to him, and we know for a fact that he actually sent him a copy of it. So it's probably kept in Mr. Dill's archive in London, I believe.
موجه للقائد العام للجيوش الإنجليزية في فلسطين. لفظن الأم بتمل يا حضرة القائد دل لفظن الأم بتمل لكن انت سايرها يمكن على يدك بتحل يا حضرة القائد دل. قضيتنا كلها فهمتها ما بيلزم إلك تفسير ما دمت رجل خبير وقائد عسكري كبير قضيتنا كلها فهمتها ما بيلزم إلك تفسير فهم لندن باللي صار واللي بعده راح يصير فهم لندن باللي صار واللي بعده راح يصير العرب أمي أحرار طبقتها لازمتكو كتير ودبرها يا مستر بل يمكن على يدك بتحل
I think this gives you an idea, and if I want to translate all the lyrics, you'll see that it was in some places contentious, in some places satirical, but they were talking politics at that point in time. Within the confines of the two broadcasting stations, Palestinian composers began to develop an increasingly elaborate song form centered on poetry in classical Arabic with occasional use of colloquial language. Unlike the repertoire that emerged from Egypt during that period, particularly the Qaṣīda and the Dur. These songs featured extended instrumental introductions and carefully structured forms. They incorporated multiple maqams. Maqams are the scales, if you will, or the modes that used in that musical system. And explored sophisticated modulations and employed compound rhythms that were not typically associated with the Egyptian Qaṣīda or Dur, which, by the way, by the 1930s, these particular two forms in Egypt were already in decline. But in Palestine, there was something else happening. Palestinian compositions of this period also made use of instrumental interludes and drew on poetry of local poets from the Mashriq in general, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, further situating them within a broader regional classical tradition. These songs averaged 8 to 12 minutes in length, so they're not exactly short, but certainly not as long as the ones emerging from Egypt. At that time, like Kulthum was delivering songs that will go for like 40 minutes long each song, or like an hour each song. They abandoned the Dur and the Qaṣīda, but they developed a much more elaborate form in colloquial Egyptian. Those were different. Those were in classical Arabic, dense in terms of how many modulations are there and the diversity of rhythmic texture and the melodies. I'm not going to play anything today because it's going to be a bit too long. But the thing is, as Palestinians after 1948 moved to other locales in the region, particularly Lebanon, and I'm having the picture of Halim al-Rumi, who was instrumental in popularizing this genre of music, as well as the top one, Rawh al-Khammash, who worked in Iraq. Halim Rumi worked in Lebanon after that. Muhammad Ghazi also in Lebanon and Syria, and Riyad al-Bandak, Egypt, Lebanon, and Syria. They all became instrumental in popularizing this genre. So when you listen to Fairuz, for example, in the 1950s and 60s, singing Sanarji'u Yawman, this whole mentality of that kind of song emerged at the PBS and the NEBS before 1948, and we have records of it. Light songs had already begun to emerge in the region in the early years of the 20th century, offering a different mode of musical arrangement. But in the context of Palestine, these songs often addressed contemporary urban themes and provided social commentary specific to local contexts, frequently using regional dialects. This urban sensibility and imagery were expressed through simple, accessible melodies and were often reinforced by the incorporation of Western instruments or Western techniques, like singing in triads. Singing in triads wasn't really like ta-ta-ta. It wasn't popular in that region. It was basically melody moving in a stepwise motion. So let's listen to this example.
مسكين الشاب احتار مسكين الشاب احتار شو بده يعمل شو بده يسوي شو بده يعمل شو بده يسوي وهالبنات ما تركوا كار وهالبنات ما تركوا كار مسكين الشاب احتار شو بده يعمل شو بده يساوي وهالبنات ما تركوا كار الله العاطي يعطيها حسن ورقاتك فيها الله العاطي يعطيها حسن ورقاتك فيها دل ما هي تدريها دايرتهنها وترميها وتتنقل من كار الكار وتتنقل من كار الكار مسكين الشاب احتار شو بده يعمل شو بده يساوي وهالبنات ما تركوا كار كانت زهرة بوسط البيت تجنوي تطبخ كيت وكيت كانت زهرة بوسط البيت تجنوي تطبخ كيت وكيت أما اليوم ست فيوليت تعمل 20 توالت ولا بتشوي بصل عالنار ولا بتشوي بصل عالنار مسكين الشاب احتار شو بده يعمل شو بده يساوي وهالبنات ما تركوا كار.
And of course, we can take a look at that from different perspectives. This is basically a young man complaining about what's happening to young women during that period and how they are no longer in the house. They no longer want to be in the house. They want to be out there. They want to work. And he's expressing that these poor guys, the men, are really suffering because of it. So as you can look at it from that perspective, how modernity started to take shape, especially in urban areas, and you can observe the gender relations, in this whole context. Again, the area was transforming rapidly, and a lot of these things probably need additional, research. The religious songs were becoming increasingly popular at the two stations, which I found this to be so fascinating. But especially Christian religious songs, which have been part of Palestine's musical landscape for decades, actually since the early or mid-1800s. Under British rule, however, these songs, primarily occurring among Western Christian denominations, expanded rapidly and were given sustained platforms through which to disseminate and popularize choral music, harmony, and Western musical practices, often foregrounding musicians trained in European traditions. While most of this repertoire originated in Europe or North America, the texts, the poetic texts, were frequently newly written poems in standard Arabic, and it's actually well-written standard Arabic. They hired the top Arab poets to set those melodies and find certain meters that fit with them. And they set the poetry to them, اليازجي, for example. And they were crafted to fit pre-existing melodies. And over time, this practice extended beyond sacred or religious contexts and was adopted into secular musical genres, as you will see in a few minutes. If you look at this sheet music to the top, this is the poetry that accompanied this melody. But on the top left, you can see that it says Christmas hymn. It's a European melody. It has harmony, but if you look at the texture, one thing very interesting about it that it reads from right to left, not left to right, to accommodate Arabic. So many of these Western missionaries were conscientious of Arabic as a language working from right to left, and they wrote it that way. But it had harmony, it had texture, and you can see that it is designed in a vertical fashion, very much like the carols, right? Chorals, how they are delivered in a Western context. In the recording, you're not going to hear all the harmonies, but you will hear some tweaking of the texture. One person is singing an octave lower, another person is singing an octave higher, someone in the middle, and there is piano and there is some strings underneath, but you can hear it clearly. And interestingly enough, today, in some of these Protestant contexts in Palestine, they still read music from right to left, not from left to right. Even the works of contemporary composers growing up in this tradition, writing patriotic songs, they wrote from right to left. So let's listen. The lyrics celebrate the birth of Jesus, and the poetry is really, really tight to the melody. It's flawless in terms of the metric construction. These were master poets who did this. And interestingly enough, I was at the Arabic music retreat last year with Simone Shaheen and a bunch of others. Every year I go there as one of their instructors, and I encountered we encounter generally. There are a lot of interesting people. One of them is Christian Kildani from Iraq. He grew up in Iraq, that's what he knows. And one of those days, I always kind of keep an eye on him. He posted a song that he learned as a child in a Christian school in Baghdad, and it was this song. Now, the thing is about the Palestine Broadcasting Station, its reach was really, really, really wide. People in Egypt were able to listen to the radio. And it was established in 1936. There were no other stations except for Egypt, which was established in 1934. So in 1936, the Palestine Broadcasting Station, based on their infrastructure, it managed to reach the whole region, from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Transjordan, Egypt, and even beyond. Some people kind of reference that they were able to even hear it all the way in Aleppo. So it's pretty impressive when you think about that. And I found this song in a book written in Arabic in 1913, and that's the information that kind of follows. Now this song, because obviously a lot of musicians were trained in Western music and in primarily religious contexts, their writing skills, and as composers, we know whatever we learn as composers, we somehow implement. It doesn't really matter if it's a secular context or a religious context. But at that point in time, there was an opportunity to use what you learned or what they learned and implement it in a secular context. And what I found more interesting in this region at this time, many of the Palestinian thinkers during that period, including Sabr al-Sharif and Azmi al-Nashashibi, they didn't only want to create new music out of the melodies that they encounter. They wanted to also utilize colloquial poetic meters and twist them around and apply new music to them. And you will see that when Sabr al-Sharif made it to Beirut after 1948 and started working with the Rahbani brothers. The Rahbani brothers, up until 1956, were very much doing everything in classical Arabic. There were very little colloquial in their music. But when Sabr al-Sharif had a contract with them and they started working together, the Rahbani brothers started doing the same exact thing, going back to colloquial poetic meters and composing them in a different way. And you can find so many examples of this in their writings where zajal or colloquial poetic meters are being utilized. Now, I found an earlier, much earlier example in this song, which uses Aliyadi as a poetic meter. Aliyadi is a folk melody. Aliyadi, liyadi, liyadi, mahlat rabik ya biladi, wa mahlat rabik. Something like that, right? It's a known melody and it's a known poetic meter. So when you write in that poetic meter, it doesn't mean that you're going to sing the same original melody. So they started doing that sort of thing. Now listen to this. It's not going to sound anything like what I just sang for you.
حبيني يا بنت الدار حبيني وخدي دينار حبيني وحب البابا حبي ماما وحب الجار حبيني يا بنت الدار حبيني وخدي دينار حبيني وحب البابا حب الماما وحب الجار حبيني يا ستي بدور والبابا جاب لك عصفور وانا حاجب لك بابور حبيني يا ستي
So I transcribed this, I wrote it down, and it seems to me like there's a string quartet and there's a piano accompanying it. And it's pretty impressive how everything was organized and worked perfectly. It's very tight musically. The performers know what they're doing. The intonations are where they're supposed to be. The harmonies are good. And these are children's songs from the 1940s. So it was mind-blowing when I stumbled upon this recording. So aware of Palestine's position as secondary only to Egypt in shaping musical developments in the region, and of its potential role in forging a broader nationalist identity in the Near East, Palestinian musicians actively embraced hybrid forms of song. Recognizing the region's musical diversity, they sought to create a new sound that drew from multiple traditions, one capable of articulating a renewed national discourse. This musical project aimed to orient the Near East toward a more collective future, shaped by an emerging identity that encompasses the people of Al-Mashriq, likely envisioned within the political framework of the Hashemite leadership, given the dynamics of the period and based on the rhetoric and writings of contemporaries. One of the most interesting aspects of such a trajectory is that it was talked about in broadcast publications of PBS, primarily by Azmi Nashashibi, where we all know, at least back then, that the Nashashibis, as a family from Jerusalem, were Hashemite loyalists. Their allegiance was with the Hashemites. And the Nashashibi, Azmi Nashashibi, he was the director of the Arabic section within PBS. In this recording, you will hear an instrumental introduction called Dulab, which at that time used to appear in Egypt, followed by a free vocal line by Yusuf Radwan, a singer and a oud player from Jerusalem. And the style is based on an Iraqi musical genre called Sab'awi, 7 lines of poetry. That's what Sab'awi means, 7. And in singing the poem, Radwan's pronunciation is lightened in a way, and it changes to accommodate local taste, adjusting intonations along the way, and more interestingly, including an Iraqi rhythm at the middle of the song in the background. We're not gonna try to stick to my time.
بستان حبك حياتي من المباسم ورد يا سعد قاصد حماك ومن لروضك ورد أمان 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 يا نجيني
Here is that these were separate genres that appeared or occurred separately from each other. Palestinians at that point, wanting to imply sort of a collective nationalist agenda, they started bringing them to one form, new form. Lastly, Western music emerged also as a significant force during this period, evident in songs that featured orchestration, sophisticated arrangements, harmonic complexity, and stylistic experimentation. Even in instrumental recordings, just like this one, local musical elements remained present. Despite the inclusion of features that might be described as Orientalist, which is a discussion left for a different time, taking together these renditions reflect a strong spirit of experimentation and an organic approach to modernization rather than a wholesale adoption of Western models. East goes to modulate and it expands quite in an impressive fashion at the end, and it brings a lot of local themes to it. It kind of a new way of thinking about the East while sounding at first like the Balaleka ensembles that were popular in the 1940s. I found this in the British Archive, which is, we don't have much record of the sounds of the battles that took place in 1948, except for this one. This battle took place outside this building in what's today West Jerusalem, between the Arab and the Zionist military groups or armed groups. And you're going to hear the shooting, recorded by Rex Keating from within. It continues for 7 minutes, this recording. And this is the barcode I was telling you about. So feel free to scan it. You will get a copy of the whole presentation as PDF form. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you and appreciate the invitation. It's so kind.
Thank you very much indeed, Issa. It was, as your title suggested, a fascinating interplay between tradition and innovation, but also an intricate interweaving of scholarship, musical performance, and poetry. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next week, if you'd like to, please join us for the last in this lecture series on song. It's Richard Morrison, the chief music critic of the Times newspaper, who will be delivering a lecture on how song shapes society and how society shapes song. Please do come back. Thank you.